Now, speaking of overtly political, and we know the Trump camp is no fan of the Sussexes, here's what Eric Trump had to say earlier this week.
My father had so much respect for the Queen, as did I. My mom knew so many of them for years. I think you probably know that. Had a great relationship with Diana and everyone else. And, that's a very sacred kind of institution. And you can happily have those two back. We'll happily send them back from America. You can have them back over here. But I'm not sure if you guys want them any more than we might not want them anymore. They feel like they're on a little bit of an island of their own. But listen, you can always have bad actors in anything. You can always have spoiled apples in every orchard.
Esther, this is not the first time. What is the point of this commentary?
Well, I think he's just kind of echoing the sentiments that we already know of Donald Trump, which is that he's not a very big fan of the Sussexes. I mean, he's been very blunt and said he's actually not a fan of Meghan, and he thinks Harry is being pulled along for a bit of a ride. And he's always been very clear about his admiration for the Queen and how distasteful he thought their treatment of not just the Queen, but the royal family has been. I don't actually think Donald Trump or anyone on his team, should he win office again in November, would actually deport them, because I don't think there'll be many grounds to. However, there is an ongoing case that was launched by the Heritage Foundation to actually unseal Prince Harry's immigration documents, because he has been very vocal about his drug use in his book Spare and sort of other interviews and all of that. And if he didn't disclose that in his immigration document, you could make the case for favoritism. Now, I've spoken to someone who works at the Heritage Foundation, and he said the case is going very well for them and they're likely to win. So that could be another hurdle for them. And, it's something that, while I think is unfortunate, because I don't think the average member of the public would, Prince Harry has been loose-lipped, and he's been sort of he's ill-judged his comments and the kind of impact that they would have. And this is something that might very well come back to bite him on the bum. Now, the Americans, it seems, have kind of cooled off on the Sussexes. Britain, I don't think, certainly wants them back. So it looks like the only option is Canada. And I don't think that'll go down well. We'll just have to wait and see how that one goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And still on Harry, an interesting report this week that Harry's bored and struggles to fill his days. And look, this is hardly surprising when you consider someone who had such a full and structured routine in his previous life as a working royal. Evidently, it continues to take time for him to find his feet. Was this bound to happen?
I suspect so, but I'm surprised it's happened, 4 years down the line after they've left the royal family. That's what I find a bit surprising. They have their hands tied with their young children. And of course, he doesn't have the structure that he would have in the royal family. But I think it's much bigger than that. It's not just about the lack of structure. It's about the lack of impact. I think he knows that by leaving and just kind of carrying on with the Invictus Games and his polo stuff and basically following Meghan around while she, follows other endeavors like making jam and having chicken coops. It is quite a downgrade. No matter what you do, you can't have as much of an impact. Now, we know they've had their tour in Nigeria, which many called quasi-royal, but you can't say that he didn't have any sort of similarities, or he didn't have any sort of feelings about what he was doing in Nigeria, because it would be very similar to what he would have done as the working royal, but it would have certainly had more of an impact. He wouldn't have been seen as a subject of ridicule. He's been tied up in the courts with these cases against sort of these media outlets that he's suing for wrongful collection of information about him. What happens when those suits ends? What else is he going to do? The couple, we know, have a trip planned to Colombia on the invitation of the Vice President of Colombia. But again, these sorts of quasi-royal, if we can call it that, tours are not as impactful as, the work that he once did. And I'm sure he knows that. And I'm sure on some level that must sting. And I'm sure on some level he must still hold a bit of resentment, because from everything that we've heard since he's left the royal family, he doesn't think anything is his fault. And he's the wounded party here.
And just on that visit to Colombia, what is the purpose of this trip? And we understand it's causing some angst for the royal family. Why is that?
So the Archewell Foundation has had some sort of charitable pursuits, and the couple's invitation by the Vice President of Colombia is to sort of further that, to get to know more about the local culture, to find about charitable pursuits that they can get stuck into. But again, because they don't represent the royal family in any official capacity, there can't be any official blowback. But there will be some consequences if they do something that's completely sort of out of step with what the royal family would do. He is still the king's son. And it's kind of the worst of both worlds, because they're not in any way bound by royal protocol, or in any way, trying to not act in a way that would make the royal family's life more difficult. But at the same time, they're also trying to find their way and find their purpose. For the royal family, you can see how that poses a headache. But for them as well, 4 years down the line, a failed Spotify deal. We don't know where the Netflix deal is heading off. Their star has waned. They're still trying to find their feet. Meghan is gearing up to sell jam and dog food. I mean, they seem to be a bit all over the place. And unfortunately, they're a couple that command attention no matter where they go, and so they can never even sort of fail in secret. And I suspect that also can be mentally taxing, and that's certainly taxing on the relationship, no matter what anyone says. So there are a lot of concerns that if this is what they're going to do, they're just going to go to places like Nigeria or Sub-Saharan Africa and South America and potentially East Asia, and trying to find pockets of the world where the royal family may not have as much of an influence, and then do what? They're not royals.
No, that's exactly right. But, that, as I call it, the non-royal royal tour, and they are doing their best in that department that they can. Whether it has the impact that you speak about or not is an entirely different question. Esther Krakue, as always, thank you so much for joining us.